Hey guys, it's Emily from The Emily Show. I hope you're all doing really well. Today's video is a little bit different as I've had the wonderful privilege of interviewing contemporary jewellery maker and designer Islay Spalding at Double Door Studios. So if you'd like to join me for the intriguing and lovely conversations we had, grab a blanket, grab a hot drink and enjoy the rest of the video. So Islay, tell me a bit about yourself.
I'm a jewellery designer maker. I've been working now for technically 18 years officially, but I graduated in 2005, so it just took me a couple of years to set up my business. And I make bespoke kilt pins primarily, work in silver and gold, do a lot of other bespoke jewellery, and I make small collections as well, which I sell locally and at craft markets. And we're here in Double Door Studios, which is my studios, which I rent some benches to other people in as well.
So you went to DJ Camp as well?
I did, yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
It was really good, but it does feel like a long time ago now, which is crazy. But yeah, as we were saying before, definitely a place where you learn how to like open your mind and think of things in different ways than maybe were thought of before. Yeah, that would be my biggest takeaway from it.
Definitely more like freeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So from the beginning of your art career, since you made that decision that you wanted to do art, was it always jewellery that was your speciality, or?
It always has been since I've been working, yeah. Before I went to art school, I kind of just wanted to go to art school. I didn't really think about the career. I just thought that would just happen. So I could have been sort of anything in a way, but I knew I wanted to make stuff, and it was when I got to art school that I really discovered the jewellery department and how jewellery was made. I didn't really know before it was really hands-on. I don't know, I think I thought like, Bertha, a factory machine, just pumped it out. I wasn't sure, I didn't realise it was so built and so like sort of fabricated. And I've always liked, making things side of, I think, of drawing things or making things. And so it was at art school and finding the workshop and finding I could make things. People understand jewellery. It's very, it's it looked like to me a very easy option for me to be able to learn something and then make a career out of it. Yeah.
So I looked at on your page about you and all your work, and I've seen that you're very influenced by like Gaelic culture. Or Gaelic culture.
Gaelic, yeah, in Scotland.
And like landscapes. Is there any messages that you like to conceive in your jewellery apart from your influences?
It's funny because sometimes I'm not sure how much I don't spend all my time making just what I want to make, because I do a lot of bespoke work. I'm working for customers a lot as well. So actually making a client sort of dream or vision come true is more what I do now. And I like that, I think, because you're like given this little brief all the time to work to, because it's easy to get interested in loads of things, isn't it? And generally, this is what's going on around me that does interest me, and so I guess, when I was at art school, I used to think I would, make some sort of big statement, with the work I created, but then the further on I, got down and just, making a living out of it as well, the more you realise you've got to bend a little bit. You can't necessarily just do what you want to do all the time. You've got to do what allows you to keep going in the direction you want to go in. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I struggle with a little bit, because whenever I think of an idea that I want to do outside of school, I always just do it. It's never been that process of research, investigation, development. It's always been just do it for me. So I think, and it's a change because obviously uni like forces you to do your research, like I'm doing now, investigate materials and how you want to put them together, and then develop your ideas from there. But normally at home when I'm doing work, I just kind of think, oh, it would be nice to draw that, or I just do it, and like it obviously doesn't always turn out perfectly, but like it does happen. I've done it, and so like with the dollhouse I'm currently doing, it's amazing, and it is kind of what I had in mind. I already do have notes, however, of what I would do in the future if I was to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So there definitely is that kind of changing process.
Yeah.
So as I said, my project in my school, and it's called Thinking Through Making. So again, all the 3D stuff, no drawing, no painting on canvases. And as I said before, I'm not a jeweller. I can respect it, it's lovely, and you make lovely artwork, but for me it would be too itty-bitty, and like I couldn't do all the intricate stuff.
Yeah, I really like the scale. I tried to go big once and I was like, oh, I can't go big, you know, and so it's a scale thing you get, I think, you get people.
What normally goes into your research, or like even at university, and how do you sort of start a project?
Okay, so, well, I guess it totally depends on the project, and I was just thinking as well as you were speaking there, that when you're making a career and therefore a living out of doing this, like everything you do, you need to almost have a reason for doing it, which is sad sometimes, because that gets in that way of this creative process that you think is all just like, you know, I can, you know, just take stuff and make it happen and da 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 da. You're like, oh, but why? And then, you know, annoyingly that comes back to money a lot of the time, because you're making decisions based on whether you can make enough money to keep having the freedom to make these decisions, you know. So it would totally depend on the project. So like for the bespoke kilt pins, I would say they follow quite a typical, like what you're taught, you know, way of looking at source materials, finding out questions, you know, finding out things from the customer, asking them questions, probing them a bit to find out something else, and then, you know, looking at those things in the sketchbook, taking elements out of it, drawing some ideas, going back to them, they say I like that, don't like that, redrawing it. Yeah, it's sort of very like standard processes, I would say. But then other projects, like if I'm thinking of the jewellery I'm making sort of almost in the background, which is jewellery I'm making there's more, you know, it's not for somebody, well it will be eventually, but I'm making it out of my own head a little bit more. That's kind of different, because that's sort of more ongoing, and I don't necessarily sit down and say, well, you know, now I'm doing just source drawing. I do sometimes, but it's like totally sporadic, because it's harder maybe to sort of quantify that work in a way. So that happens a little bit more when it comes to me, when I feel like, or maybe I've set a couple of days aside to actually go out and, you know, just my sketchbook and me, and we'll do some drawing, you know, and I'm always quite ashamed about how little drawing you can actually do. You know, it takes ages and things like that. But so it's done much more fluid and like in with my life a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that is one thing I agree with, because in this module we're like, they're kind of trying to push us away from using our sketchbooks, and like as the module's name is called, Thinking Through Making. So that's difficult for me, because I'm a very like, I have to write things down. Like I got higher maths, but I can't do mental maths for anything. Like it's, or I've got to like take notes, I've got to write it down, and it's difficult because we're being pushed away from that process.
Okay.
So it's very, like, I would say it's a bit more difficult to do that, because as well about money, like you've got to think whether experimenting something will actually just waste your budget, waste your time as well. It's not like, otherwise if you drew it out, if you like, I'm doing a piece with lino, and I did sketch out the kind of design I wanted on the lino first, but I would have loved to do it sketchbook and make like thumbnails and then decide which one's best. But it, like, that's, you know, that's the difference between what I'm normally doing, what this module's kind of influencing me to do. Yeah,
and I think probably actually that, if you think about it, that's the kind of thing that comes with experience and confidence in your ability as well. That like, you know, like the sort of the right way to do it sometimes is to go through all the possibilities and, you know, cancel that out, and as you say, like have all the thumbnails, and then, you know, in an ideal world we would do that. Like And I guess something with the kilt pins for a customer, in a ideal world, I would do actually way more of that research, and I would do it maybe more carefully, and I'd give them more options. But there's a point where you're like, they're not going to pay for this much time to spend design, so I've got to cut it. And sometimes I'll do something and I'm like, you're just going to give them your first option you came up with. But then you're like, well, wait a minute, I've been drawing out kilt pin designs now for long enough that I can count all those hundreds and hundreds of other drawings I've done as almost part of I've been through those options. I don't need to do that, and this customer doesn't need to necessarily know all that as well. They're trusting me to give them a good design. So if it's my first design, then I'm like, nailed it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Do you have an example of like what questions you'd ask a customer and sort of what the kind of, when you're trying to find out what they want is?
Yeah, I've got a wee Google form that asks a few questions. It's not very in depth, but it's sort of, it's also a little bit to weed out people who aren't serious or not as well. Because I used to spend a lot of time answering back customers and feeling terrible if I couldn't do what they asked me to do, or do it in the time frame or for the budget they would, for some reason. I don't know, I'd feel bad. So if you can do this in a week, £100, I'd be like, well, no, but I'd be like, I feel so bad, I wish I could. I don't even know this person, I don't know why I feel like that. But the people pleasing of being a woman or something, I don't know.
What are some techniques that you use whilst making and researching your jewellery? Is there anything from like basic things that you figured out in uni versus things that you've done on your own and you've been like, oh, that's a unique technique?
What's that? I think a lot of, obviously with jewellery, there's a lot of techniques, and you're always learning, and there is people, and you'll never be master of them all, and you shouldn't be either. It's but I would say a lot of the techniques I use I maybe learned about them or a little bit of them in uni, but certainly it's been time after uni and practice, and just time and practice that's got them better and got me faster and more confident in knowing what I'm doing with them. You'll probably hear this if you talk to other jewellers, but the art school jewellery training that we get is not very technical, and there's a whole side of the sort of craft, the trades that you don't get at art school, that you've really got to learn either on the job, like a mad person, or go and get some almost like apprenticeship, more trade training at the job, because a lot of it is very, especially the making, a lot of it is very just hand skills and practice and coordination and getting to know the tools, getting to know the feeling. There's so much you don't realise you've learned until you try and teach somebody else, and you're like, oh right, I didn't realise what I was doing there. I was, there was something behind it more than just, it's like you to tell somebody to bang a nail with a hammer and they've never done it before, you get a bit of a shock because you're like, oh, this was difficult, but this is, So most of that's probably learned on the job. Just trying to think of unique things. I don't know if I've got any processes that are particularly unique that I've come up with anyway, sadly. I would love to have invented a process, but then saying that, there'll be something that I do that I don't even maybe realise, is just a thing that you almost sort of take for granted, some way you make something, or some way you approach something. There's always there's a million ways to do things in jewellery, so I guess what happens is you get to know your ways of doing things and what you're more comfortable with, what more tools you're used to using, and you can make that piece maybe 10 different ways and get to a similar conclusion, and so that's probably where it becomes unique, is just these little nuances of how you look at something and then turn it into a 3D form, or the other way around. And I was just sort of thinking there, this might feed back into your last question, when talking about does it the sort of research for design or design process. Most of my things I do start on paper because I'm speaking to a customer and I'm trying to show them a nice drawing of how it will look. But I've got a design just now for a ring that is, the quilt pins are very 2D naturally, so they really work on paper. When you're drawing a ring, generally you've got to draw a top view and a side view, and maybe a side view as well. That's not the correct names for these views. And then of course if you're 3D modelling it now, you would get like a nice 3D spin around, you know, so you can play with this 3D form, you know, a computer a lot easier. But because I'm not working on a computer, I'm going to make it. I've kind of come to the end of the drawing stage now, and I need to go and make to decide on this form, because I'll never get there with the drawing. Yeah. I need to make this in wax, and then I'll maybe cut into it a little bit, and I'll create shapes from maybe cutting in or filing into this wax that I never would realise were there if I was just drawing it, you know, kind of negative shapes or shapes within shadows or different sort of angles and stuff. So yeah, it totally depends on the job. So that's when I will approach much more like playing with it with 3D, and then probably go back to drawing a little bit to try to fit the stones in.
So, like, is there anything you wish that you'd sort of learn at uni that you learn on your own, or school and you learn at uni or primary school or secondary school?
I think there's always things, and it's sometimes you're like, oh, it's hard to know, because then you learn these things by yourself then as well, and uni seemed pretty full at the time, but I don't know, sometimes I don't know, but they spend half the time doing it under Johnston, but they do seem to produce, like, you know, good artists, designers out the end of it. But I know just from an actual like skills and technique, and this is talking about very much the jewellery department now, I know that there's other like places that you seem to learn a lot more in the time, but then, you know, maybe we're learning something else that these places aren't learning. So I'm always going to look at it optimistically and think that, but like a couple of things made me say that for sure. Like, you know, a girl that studied with me when we were there, she went over to San Diego for a term, and the amount of work she produced over there compared to what we did back at uni was quite scary actually. And she seemed to have a really good time, made loads of good friends in foreign countries. So you're like, what's going on there? You know, is it our work ethic? Where we just, sometimes I look back and it's like we did go out a lot, you know, early 2000s. We were, but no, I can't, and then I know somebody that's studying in Germany just now. Now their education system is very different, their higher education system in the arts, and especially the art school she is at. But yeah, the amount of, I think this is something to do with the strictness. And they're much more made to, like, you'll keep songing that line until it's perfect. Whereas the sort of ethos at Dr. Johnston was that, oh, you've not finished your project, that doesn't matter, you just display a half-finished project. Oh, we'll just use some glue and stick it together, and you're like, we're making jewellery, man. This is like meant to, part of this is it's meant to last, right? But that's, so yeah, I'm going to say we must have been taught other things in that time. Yeah. But I do think there could have been a lot more skills-based learning and a lot more strictness within that as well, and more theory as well too. So although it was great that you went to arts and it was all like open and amazing, I sometimes wish there was maybe more of a balance there, and you actually maybe got a bit more half and half almost, you know. Yeah. But yeah, that's just
like I love how practical the course is, because I think I was quite rubbish at the theory stuff in high school. I mean, obviously I would do it anyway if there was theory, but I think it's a good ratio, like that hour-long lecture that we have a week, or now it's 2 hours. Like, it's so good listening to an artist talk about their work and the lecturers and talk about their work. But an hour, like, I am someone who, if I'm having a conversation with someone for an hour, perfectly fine. But the hour-long listening to someone talk about work is enthusiastic and amazing as the work is. Like, I rewatch them normally at home because I feel like I've just taken nothing in.
Yeah, just zoned out.
And I love writing and stuff, so I feel like I do take notes in the lecture, but I would prefer, like, if there was something like, or if we had to look at the PowerPoints on our own, or like actually go and interview the lecturers themselves. I feel like that would be a fun experiences. But the lectures are good. I think the one I had Friday morning was really good. As well, if one of the lectures, and this is like all due respect to lecturers because they're brilliant people, but if you have a boring voice and you've not got in much enthusiasm is in like how you speak, and you're not like using body language, it can be quite exhausting for people who are listening because
I'm just staying awake.
Yeah. So I mean, we've not really had anyone who's had a boring voice or anything, and they've all been interesting and their work's interesting enough to pay attention if they weren't. But I think like on the theory part, I guess I expected as well more theory when I was going to uni, like because the lectures, can you even call them theory?
I know, it's very, it's loose because I always wish as well we had to do more writing, although that's not what I want to do at all, but it would have prepared us more for our dissertation, which was quite, I don't know, is it still 25% of your mark? I don't know,
I know we have to do a dissertation.
Yeah, it's quite a large chunk of the mark, and you've definitely got it better now because you've got a bit more freedom in your dissertation. You can write business plans or like sort of like report or almost like investigations and things rather than I think it's a lot more useful certainly for the design school, but you can write a business plan. I think if you're actually going to like go and like open a business, I think that makes total sense. So I think I would have loved for more prep to that, so it didn't feel so scary. And like there's no reason why we shouldn't have been doing that work still as well. I don't think, even though we're like, we're not art school to write, but you get into the real world, you've got to write so much. Like you have got to write, and you've got to write about yourself. You've got to write applications. Like, of course you've got to write, but maybe there's just a bit of that as well. Like we all moan about, if only they told us at school that how to apply these things we were learning and where they fit into the real world. It's just like that again, maybe a bit actually, and sometimes I think people actually, if they've had a couple of years between school and uni, can get on a little bit better because they're more willing. They're just a wee bit older, so they're more willing to like go and do that work to learn for themselves a little bit more. But that can be a real shock in like a good. It depends on how you take it when you're left with freedom. Sometimes sometimes I'll be like, they didn't teach us enough at uni, but then I'm like, did I work hard enough? But then but I had a good time.
That like the verbal part is a big part of uni as well. Like talk about your work like you are now. When we go around everyone's studios at the end of the module, I quite like doing that because I think like a couple of years back I wouldn't have done that. I hate standing up and speaking in front of like the class and stuff, but actually I quite enjoy it now because I feel like it's not just about like at school, at secondary school you would have just googled something, researched it, presented it, whatever, and it might have not been your favourite subject as well, versus I feel like with art you're putting yourself into that art and like any which way, so you've got to be somewhat passionate about it. So I feel like that kind of influences me personally to talk about my art more confidently. Have you got any tips or advice for beginner artists, whether it's just jewellery making or overall as an artist?
Like pull as much as you can out of art school. Like ask all the questions, and like if you feel like you're not learning something or something's missing, then demand it. Don't be too hard on you, but I think like asking questions and building your network, I think are the important things.
And with the kind of outside student life kind of stuff, the same.
And like get involved, and like the girl I was speaking to earlier, she's in 4th year Rowan, and I was saying to her, because she was asking me a bit about so I make wooden man pins with my friend Louise, and I was saying this project came about really just because we were like friends and we want to do something together, and it's just a side project, it's just a friend project, but it has become quite a massive bit of our lives and a part of our design careers, and it's got us other opportunities as well through that. And then the TV markets that we do, we made them almost to be able to set something that's more of a market price, sell a market. It was our friend Joe that started these markets. So then And it wasn't until I was speaking to Rowan that I was like, oh yeah, it's just doing things with your mates.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where it all starts. It starts at art school of just doing things with your mates, and you're all at this art school together, and pull as much out of them and everything, but they're not going to just like give you stuff and give you opportunities.
Yeah.
Like you have to make them for yourself, and I think that starts there. And you might not know what it is yet, but definitely being with it's always those years when you notice those years that come out of art school, the years that are working together as a year group, and like whether it's a bunch of fine art of them all together. The name will come to me in a wee minute, Scoosh or something like that. But that was just a bunch of graduates from a few years ago that were like, we want to be able to display our work. So there's the car park at the food bank on Perth Road, up on the right, just before the Tartan Cafe. You maybe never even noticed it. So I used to hang around Dundee more. And so they just commandeered a wall of that car park and called it a gallery. And that's them just doing that together. It's like you can do anything you want to if you just go and do it. So building these networks now of you and all your friends makes the new scene happen, or makes the things happen. No one's necessarily going to do it for you.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
so create the opportunities on your own.
Yes.
So what's your kind of favourite pieces that you like to make? Like, do you have a preference between like rings, necklaces?
I usually like to make what I'm not working on at the time. Because that seems easier. Yeah. And I like the variety. I really like the variety actually. I think it's hard. It'd be really hard to pick one thing because it's the variety that makes them all interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, my project is a tiara. Would you ever consider making a tiara, or do you think that's a bit?
Well, I guess I would, because a tiara is a pretty awesome thing. But goodness knows about that. So if the commission and the money was right, I'd make a tiara.
Well, it was lovely having this interview with you.
Okay. I need to see your tiara collection.
Thank you so much for watching, guys, and of course thank you to Isla for letting this interview happen. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!